Welcome back, everyone. In today's video we're going to finish up our XT project. Yeah! Sorry. Well, as it turns out, you can still buy these fans. This is a Rotron, or Comair Rotron. This is the factory installed fan. Well, a variant of it anyway, for the IBM PC and XT power supplies. If anyone needs one of these, they're still out there. This thing is probably 30 years old. It's definitely new old stock. This is how it comes. This thing is probably been in the box for 20, 30 years. But this is the factory style fan. This is the same manufacturer, the same model. The only difference is this one has the leads. Actually, no, same leads. We just need to reuse this connector right here. That shouldn't be too hard. All right, let me go find the clips that go on it. Don't make the mistake of accidentally installing a 12-volt fan in this thing, because if you do, you're going to see more smoke than you've seen in your life. So it goes in, it mounts to this cover with the motor side up. Yeah. You can see them side by side. There are some design changes over the years, but for the most part it's the same fan dam. The original one was made in Woodstock, New York. The new one was made in Mexico, so other than that, they're the same damn thing. All right. Now, a lot of folks have found, modern equivalents to these fans, and that's okay. You can certainly do that. I chose to stick with the original because, I don't know, I'm kind of a purist, and I like the fact that this is a die-cast fan housing, which means that it should be pretty quiet. The die-cast aluminum tends to absorb a lot of vibrations and noise, so it should be a fairly quiet unit when it's all said and done. So what I need to do is we're going to try to cut this wire to about the same length as the original, which is probably about, I go a little bit longer just for safety, and just trim it down a little bit. Okay, and we're going to strip some of this insulation back. Actually, I don't think I need to. I'm gonna try to reuse this connector by George. Okay, it is a 3-pin connector. The 2 outer pins are used, and it just look at this. You don't even need to strip it. You just pull this off. Oh, it doesn't want to give it up. What we're going to do is have to so I've given it some thought. Am I going to recap this or not? I'm going to hedge on the side of no, and the reason why, you know what, I'm starting to think maybe it would be better if I just splice this on, because I don't want to break the connector. And nah, that'll be fine. Anyway, so I'm gonna say probably not going to happen. I'm probably not going to do all that work because I don't really see a reason to right now. I mean, the thing is, every capacitor that I've pulled out of that unit so far has tested good. And I just don't feel like it's necessary to go replacing everything. I mean, it has no issues. There's no symptoms. There's no problems. It runs great. I'm going to leave it alone. And then, you know what? If it blows the hell up on its own accord, then I guess it blows the hell up, you know? I don't think it's going to. But, you know, why do extra work if you don't have to? Make sure we reuse this, this tube here. There we go. Polarity doesn't matter, it's AC. I used to mash this down in. I'll probably use a flat blade. These are only meant to be used once, so we're kind of going against nature here, but that's okay. And what you do is you just press it down, and the connector will bite in through the insulation and form a nice tight connection with any luck, if you do it right. If you do it wrong, well then you're screwed. But okay, and we put the slidey doohickey back on there. How will we know if it works? We're going to power it up, that's how. Alright, that should do it. Orientation. What we'll do is we'll look at the, well, before we do any of that, I want to turn this on and make sure that we got the connection right. So here's the power supply. It's pretty clean. I mean, this machine was used, but not extensively. I think I'm going to run this out to the garage and blow it out with compressed air, just to get that out of the way. And I'm looking at the screws that I have here, and I'm not sure I have the correct ones for the fan mounting. Weird. All right, let me go clean this up. Okay, so we got this all beautified. Look at that. Now, what I don't see is residue spilling out of capacitors. That's what I'm going to be looking for. I don't see any bulging domes. I mean, these older capacitors, in my findings, and your mileage may vary, but in my experience personally, they're the least likely to fail. Yeah, they just, this radio right here, this particular radio is from 1994, and out of the 61 capacitors I pulled out of it, probably 10% were still within spec. 1984 Fujitsu 10 radio from a Toyota. Every capacitor that I pulled out was still good. Okay, now, the other thing you want to consider when weighing these options, and this is my opinion, not fact, consider how it was used. Based on the amount of dust, or lack thereof, this thing was used very little. This is an analog power supply. This is not a switching power supply. In fact, it should say as much. If it doesn't say switching, and it doesn't. Now, this is an analog. This is what, yeah, this is a non-switching power supply, meaning that it uses transformers and capacitors and other means of reducing and controlling power. A switch mode power supply uses frequency to change voltage. and they're more sensitive. These things, I'm not thinking that's going to be the case. If this is a switch mode power supply, then I am Mickey Mouse, because there's no way. All right. Usually switch mode power supplies will say so on the actual case. Another thing to consider. This thing only puts out just a few watts, or it only draws like 1 amp. Okay. 3 amps. Okay, so it draws 3 amps max. I believe that, or that's continuous. 3 amps max, or either way, that's very low. So there's not a lot of heat being generated in here. It's also fan cooled. So that's another thing to consider. So I'm going to take all of that information and computate it in my brain and say, I'm not going to do a cap job on this thing unless I really need to. Okay, beating a dead horse. I can't find the fan screws. There should be 4 screws that look something like this, but not quite. And I can't find them. All right, I figured out the mystery. It is these screws. It's it's going to be these. It should be 4 of those that match. And yeah, so there we go. Another case to be made for blowing out the power supply before reassembly is the fact that we had to drill a rivet. And whether I put a rivet back in yet remains to be seen. I haven't decided. Well, we're going to test it first. But there's a very real possibility that we'll be going back into this thing in a couple of months, couple of years to do a cap job. So I'm kind of torn. I'm all for historical accuracy, but I also want it to be serviceable. All you fancy kids who grew up with ATX power supplies may not know this, but an AT power supply can be turned on with a flip of a switch. No jumpers needed. Here we go. Okay, the fan is not running. Power supply turns on. Fan does not spin. So our little connector job didn't really work out, did it? Okay, I was able to repress those connectors right in tight, and then I squeezed the connector by the sides with a pair of slip joint pliers. Voila. I don't know what that noise is. Maybe it's a discharging process, but listen to that. Never heard that before, but okay. Okay, our next order of business is actually a bit of a surprise. I have been hemming and hawing over my graphics situation since I got this machine. When I bought it, it had the IBM TTL monochrome only, no graphics, no fun display adapter. But that's kind of the reason I bought it, because it still had the factory display, the original IBM 5151, which is what I wanted because it's a beautiful monitor and it looks nice. Those are two very much the same thing. Anyway, so the problem with that is I didn't realize just how limited the graphics card was. So in a previous video, we upgraded it to a Hercules display adapter, and here it is. So I quickly found out the Hercules is heavily limited, and while there are software overlays that can be run to make it kind of sort of work like a CGA display, I just see that as inviting more problems into the mix. Westlife wisened me up to a possible solution to my dilemma that allows me to continue using my display with CGA compatibility, and that is with this display adapter. This is not ATI's first product, but it is part of a series that was their first product line. This is the ATI Small Wonder, or Graphics Solution Plus. And I bought this from a Canadian eBay seller for a whopping, I think I paid $100 for this. It was a little pricey. But, you know, from what I've been reading, this is the solution. Without having to upgrade the display card and the monitor at the same time, this is what we want. Now, what I've done is I found the manual for the ATI graphics solution, the first version, and it has a completely different jumper block, or a switch block. So this one has 8 switches. The original one had only 4. And so I found that manual, but it doesn't correspond to this guy. So I did a little more digging, and I found one, the Graphics Solution version 2, that has an 8-position jumper or switch block, and it has a jumper block down here, JP1. Now, from what I'm also found out that it may even support a 9-pin digital video light pen thing, which is kind of cool. Optional, a CN2, that's connector 2, is a composite video, which didn't know it had that ability, but it apparently does. Okay, now it also states that the default position of JP1 is 2 and 3 should be closed, but here they're open. So that's interesting. I don't know. I don't have a manual for this card. I cannot find one. If anybody has a manual or knows of where I can get the settings, the Graphics Solution Plus, I would love to hear from you. Greatly, actually. That would make my day. It might even solve my problem. Anyway, we need to get this thing set up. We're going to test it out. I've set the jumper. Of course, I recorded what they were, what we started out with, in case I'm dead wrong. And now we're going to test it out. So we've got to rearrange a few things. So we'll get the monitor up here and fire it up. Hopefully not with smoke. And oh, wait, that reminds me. There's one thing. Oh, I almost switched those. There's one thing we need to do. We need to clean this card edge connector. It's disgusting. I'm going to do this with steel wool. Now, this comes with heavy caveats. Let me tell you. You can cause catastrophic damage by doing what I'm about to do. So don't worry. You don't need to tell me. I already know. There actually is a solution. I believe it's a fiberglass pen. I remember Radio Shack used to sell these. Anyway, I'm looking for something I can put my phone on. Anyway, there was a solution for that. That was basically just a fiberglass pen with some kind of some mixed foot oil or some shit in it. And what it would do is you could polish contacts like this. The risk with using steel wool, if you didn't know, is that it tends to be very fibrous. And these little fibers are so small, you can't see them. So if they go wayward, it can cause some freaking damage. Now these are, it looks like they're copper plated or gold plated, but this corrosion has me worried. And I'm taking some of the plating off by doing this. There's not much I can do about that. It looks like it's underneath the solder mask, so we got to make sure that we damn well clean this after the fact really well, because again, smoke, fire, nasty things. We don't want that. That's water. I need alcohol. There it is. My radio shop is in disarray right now. I'm between 4 different projects. One of them is a very time-consuming kind of a reverse engineer and rebuild of a Toyota radio from the 80s, which I'm very impressed with how that came. But little side note, I've had an unusual amount of customer bounces, meaning radios that were fixed that are no longer fixed. They kind of unfixed themselves. So I'm starting to consider some solution to that. But I've had to do a few returns and repairs, and yeah, it's a tough business when you're fixing 30-year-old products for people that are going into cars. There's a lot that can go wrong, and this has been one of those Murphy's Law weeks. Not something that I ever wanted to deal with, but I knew it was inevitable at some point that I'm going to get customers that have had issues with their repaired radios. But it comes with the territory. It is what it is. Anyway, so fortunately, actually, I found that the first two problematic radios weren't my fault at all. They were actually the customer, or not the customer, not like they did anything bad, but it was more or less something happened to the radio after it left my house. Be it shipping damage, mishandling. In one case, I think I found water in a radio. Pretty sure I didn't install that. Hold on, let me get this sorted out so we can work. All right, let's see what happens. Now, will it post? Will it smoke? No post. It's a dry finish at seek test. That fan is loud. That's the new fan, by the way. All right, let's try it again. Now this is with the settings as it arrived. This actually looks promising. I'm not seeing any display though. That's not good. Yeah, there's nothing on the display at all. Okay. All right. Got to do some more research. Okay, this may be the last try. Here we go. Yeah, I think I heard it. Okay. Okay, as a control, I'm putting the Hercules back in. Okay, it still works. Why don't I put a CGA emulator in there? Let's try to do that. I think it's worth a shot. So here we are at the end of the road with this machine. I have two options. Somebody either must have the dip switch settings for this card and the correct jumper settings. Because I don't. And I just don't have that information. And I have what may be something close to it, but it's not it. It's similar to the Graphics Solutions Rev 3. But not close enough to where I feel confident that I will have the correct jumper settings. I don't know. It's frustrating because this is the solution and it should work pretty flawlessly. So anyway, I looked at a couple of different CGA emulators and none of them are infallible. They all seem to have their own quirks and few features. It's I do not want to get another. I don't want to go looking for another machine or another monitor. I bought this thing on a whim. I'm actually starting to consider selling it at this point because, yeah, I should have spent the extra money on the one that was already ready to go, had all the add-ons I needed, and a keyboard. Yeah, no, it's just this user manual. Now, it does talk about the IBM motherboard switches. So, yeah, this does not appear to correspond to this card at all. Or maybe it does. No, because it references 5 switches. Let's see. Switch 5 and 6. To color ooh, maybe that's what it is. Hold on. All right, so here's where we're at. I got the fan installed. And I wanted to surprise you guys with CGA graphics on this machine using the original 5151 monitor, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. And here's why. So let's backtrack a bit. When I bought this machine, it had the original IBM text-only display adapter, the TTL adapter, which goes well with the original monitor. There's a problem, though. That adapter can do very little. It can't play games. It can't have fun. It's just a boring, word processing, number crunching. That's it. That's all it does. So there's a few options that you would have if you would own one of these machines back in the day. You can upgrade. I mean, the best solution at the time would have been to buy a new monitor, a CGA monitor, or even an EGA. And then you would buy a CGA or EGA or multi-mode display adapter. That'd be ultimate. Other options, you can install a Hercules card, which we did. We bought a Hercules card. Look at that. Hercules. Well, the Hercules card gives you a little bit more functionality for software written for it. That's the caveat. The software has to be written to work with a Hercules card. The Hercules card was kind of who's that? Was it Good Guy Steve? No, that was Douchebag Steve. No. What was that meme a few years ago? It would let you... It would allow you to use your factory 5151 monitor. Now, this is at a time when monitors weren't cheap. They were kind of expensive. So you didn't want to buy a monitor if you didn't have to. This card gave you graphics capabilities for software that is designed for that on your 5151 monitor. And apparently superior text quality. So the Hercules was kind of the maybe it was Good Guy Jim. It doesn't matter. Dave? Whatever. You know what I'm talking about. I hope. Because I don't. Anyway, the problem is the software has to be written to use this card. Otherwise, it's not really going to do much for you. The third option is from a little brand new startup, a brand new company that just wanted to get into the graphics interface industry. A little company called ATI. And ATI, this is from their very first product line. This is not the first product, but it's kind of in the very first series of cards they ever created for the industry. This is before they adopted the Small Wonder moniker. This is the Graphics Solution series, or the Graphics Solution Plus to be specific. This card hails from about 1987-86, and it is designed to provide emulated CGA graphics at the hardware level for your 5151 monitor, but there's a problem. Now, I don't know if it's a dip switch or jumper setting. I think it's a dip switch problem, but I cannot get this card to work. I have run into a problem where the dip switch settings are not available for this card. If you do a Google search for ATI graphics solution card dip switch settings or manuals, the only thing you can get is for revision 1, which is a 4-position dip switch block. Wah, wah. Now you might, I did find revision 2, this superseded revision 3. So this card is very similar to Rev 3. It has the same 8-position jumper or dip switch block, but I've tried the settings that make the most sense to me, and they do not work. I can get the machine to kind of sort of not post
I can get a graphics card error for sure. That I know how to do that. But beyond that, I can't really get much out of it. So what I need someone who happens to have the manual for this or knows the settings for this dip switch block and maybe help me out because I can't find anything on this. The card has a little bit of moisture damage, but it doesn't appear to be that bad, and it's limited to this area here. You know, none of the tantalum caps have blown their shit. So I think we're in good shape. Now, what's neat about this card is depending on which version you got, you could get one with a built-in, I believe a built-in parallel port. And it actually apparently supports a light pen, which is kind of cool. So maybe that's a serial port. Anyway, it's definitely an early ATI product, and it has some early product questionable. Look at that. See those two chips right there? Is it U13 and maybe that's U15? No, that's not U15. Where's U12 and U13? There's not enough room for the two chips to sit side by side, so they just kind of shoved it in there. Look at that. They overlap a little bit. See that? It's unique. It's unique. You know, who would have thought this company would go on to conquer the... What the fuck? Uh-oh. Do you see what I see? Corrosion. I didn't see that. No, that's not a good sign. Maybe this card's toast. I don't feel like lifting that entire chip to see. So, hold the phone. Let me try something. One of the first things I learned in kindergarten, actually, and some of you might have as well, we had to sing this song every morning. It's keep your hands to yourself and corrosion is conductive. And that stuck with me all these years. And whenever I see corrosion on boards like that, I go right back to my kindergarten days. I had a weird kindergarten teacher. She got fired for drinking malt liquor on the job, so we won't talk about that. Let's see what we got. That fan's kind of better sounding, huh? No good. I've already changed the jumper switches or the dip switches on the main board, so that's not the issue. So she won't post. This fan is actually a little knocky. And I think it's because of buffeting, and it's forcing the rotor up and down. Actually, I think that's what's going on, because I can hear it. It's like the rotor is bouncing from the air pressure. So, because I know it's a brand new fan, the rotor's not bad and it's not worn out, so there's that. We're going to have to revisit this card, but for the time being, Hercules is going back in, and that's that. My battery's about to die, so thank you for watching. Y'all have a great day.